Hello, BookTube. I went out today to do errands. And from that, you can deduce one thing for sure, which is that I ended up with 50 pounds of books. My errands did not take me to the Brattle Bookshop, but they did take me by the church of here, a church in Boston that's run by a friend of mine. And he has this sort of a jumble sale basement. He doesn't use the jumble sale anymore, but he still gets donations far and wide, tons and tons of things, including lots and lots of books. He hasn't done his sale in a while because of COVID concerns, but the books just keep coming in. So I have a standing invitation to go by there and grab anything that I want. And I did. I went today and I got a bunch of stuff. I had lots of other things that I was looking for, both at his donations and also other places, all kinds of shops, secondhand shops, thrift shops, all that sort of thing. I had a whole bunch of things that I was looking for. Didn't find anything, but I did manage to find 50 pounds of books. So I thought we'd go through those, starting with mass market paperbacks. There were a bunch of mass market paperbacks. I found two anthologies by an editor named John Canning, whose name isn't familiar to me. They were really stylish things from Bantam. There's a big thing, 50 Great Horror Stories, with original cover artwork. They're rather nice. That cloaked skull is holding a human head. And also 50 Great Ghost Stories. I am an absolute sucker for ghost stories. And both of these things were on my mind because I watched Michael K. Vaughan earlier today. He was doing an update of books for his 500 book challenge. And he held up Otto Penzler's big book of ghost stories and David Hartwell's two great anthologies of horror short stories. So that was fated to be. It was absolutely fated to be. There's some perfect condition. Always up for an anthology for a whole bunch of reasons. In addition, mainly, they might lead me to somebody that I really like that I didn't know about. Unlike that happened with horror stories, because horror stories and I really don't get along, but for some reason, ghost stories definitely please me. They don't work on me. There's no such thing as ghosts. But nevertheless, they work on me in a way that horror tends not to. Although I imagine there'll be a lot of overlap here. I imagine there'll be some ghost stories in here. Tough to make an anthology of horror stories with that one. Then we have, this is just a little paperback of Aldous Huxley. This is critical writings of his on writers and artists, Vasari and Ben Jonson, a whole bunch of other people. And this is nonfiction by Huxley, which I love. I think he's really good at it. I would ordinarily have passed on a cheap paperback like this because I don't think it'll hold together well. But I don't have any other collections of Huxley nonfiction, especially this stuff. Don't be fooled by on art and artists. These were periodic pieces. These were occasional prose, like the stuff that I write, only much better. This was just collected along a theme. That's all. Writers love to do this. They love to give you the impression that that they had a plan all along. They didn't have a plan all along. This is just Huxley or his publisher or somebody thinking, hey, why don't we pull together all of your writings on artists and writers and playwrights, that sort of thing. And that's fine by me. Absolutely fine by me. Then we have, this is by Donald Dudley, who did a really good translation and edition of the Annals of Tacitus that I think I mentioned on my library tour today. And this is his book on the civilization of Rome, this great old Mentor paperback. I've had this a million times. I found this today. It's in perfect condition, just like the day it was made, even though this came out 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 1960. Yeah, so 60 years ago. That's a long time. This is a broad overview of the civilization of Rome. It's not groundbreaking in any way, but I like the way Dudley thinks about the subject. So then we have something from March Mystery Madness. I found the first book in a series. I like this series quite a bit, and I'm due to revisit it. I haven't revisited it since the 90s. This is the first book in Archer Mayer's series, Open Season. His detective is called Joe Gunther, and these take place in Brattleboro, Vermont. And if I remember correctly, I mean, this thing was from, 1990? 1988. And it starts with a sweet little old lady who, someone comes to her door and she blows his head off with a shotgun, which, despite what you may have heard, doesn't happen all that often in Vermont. But it turns out that the two of them, the murderer and the victim, were both members of a jury on a very controversial murder trial. And someone seems to be pulling strings about all those jurors. And Joe Gunther has to figure out what that is, what the connection is and all that. These are great. They're wonderful for atmospheric, Vermont atmosphere, that sort of thing. This is the kind of, it's a policeman, yes. And it is a police procedural. He is not guided by any kind of Sherlock Holmes intuition. But there's a strong element of location here. I used to, when I was reading these things, I was popping them down as they were coming out all through the 90s. And I would always tell customers that they're very much like Donna Leon's Venice mysteries, Vermont, Venice. In either case, the location is very much an active part of the mystery. So happy to find this. Then I found a mass market paperback. This is a UK mass market paperback. It has been read a million times. I don't know why I saved it. I guess I was just feeling a little sorry for it because it's just going to sit there, or maybe my friend would throw them out. I don't have a paperback of this book. I think I have an e-copy of it, but I don't have any other things. I don't know if this will survive a reread, but I had to do it. This is A Fine Balance by Huntington Mystery. And this is really good. I mean, look at this thing. It's seen better days. I didn't know that it existed as a mass market paperback. Never came out as one in the United States. The United States has that same picture on the cover, but a little bit of a different design and a red spine. And there is our author in younger days. This is a terrific character study, really, although, boy, oh boy. I mean, it's a tight-knit cast of characters, just a small group of 4 people that are at the heart of this big book that really looks outward from them on their lives, the roads that took them to where they live in the same narrow little apartment, and also that looks outward at India. It's just a remarkable novel, an amazing thing. I don't know how readable this mass market is. I will reinforce it just a bit. I don't reinforce my hardcover dust jackets anymore. Instead, I cover them with library coverings so that the rest of you don't have conniption fits. But with an old mass market paperback, this is just going to die after me. I will reinforce this in order to make it readable. And those were the mass market paperbacks. But then we have some trade paperbacks, including what may very well be the find of the day, even though this is not any more durable than this old mass market. I love these books. I think there were only 4 of them, and I look for them. This was free, so and also the labor to get it back here was largely free. So I took it. These are running press trade paperbacks. They're too big to really be good. You'd think they're so big that they couldn't last, but my running press of Shakespeare is my favorite 1-volume Shakespeare, and I've been beating the hell out of it for years. It's still in one piece. This is the running press version of Jack London. These big, huge trade paperbacks. I will need to reinforce this quite a bit, as I did with my Shakespeare. I believe there were only 4 of these. A big volume on Jack London, a big volume on Edgar Allan Poe, 2 big volumes of Mark Twain, and a big volume on Shakespeare. I don't think that there was ever a running press for the Brontes or for Jane Austen or anything like that. I think it was just those 4, and that was it. And I made a mental note. I love these. I don't know why, but I do. They're not particularly well made. Even with reinforcement, this will probably fall apart on me. But I've made a sort of a mental note. This is the collected London that I want. And this has lots of stuff. This has all of the major Jack London novels and all of the Yukon tales and whatnot. So I now have it. I will reinforce it. It will go in the little book room. Then I found a UK trade paperback. I have a big sweet spot for them, and this is a book that I haven't read since it came out, so I really do need to reread it. I found a copy. I think I hauled it on this channel once upon a time, and I never actually got to it. But this is a UK trade paperback of Mark Bowden's breakout book, Black Hawk Down. This is, well, it says Bantam Press, but this is the UK, not the American Bantam Press, with a cover that I've never seen before. This is a story of a American expedition in Mogadishu that went horribly, horribly wrong. It was made into a movie starring Josh Hartnett and a whole bunch of other people. I haven't read it since it came out in 1990. Is that right? When did you come out? 1999. Okay, I haven't read it since then. So that's 20 years. So 30 years. So I was happy to find it, and in a form that I like, which is great because I have it as an ebook. Then I have this thing also as an ebook. This next one, it's huge. It's a big Penguin trade paperback. It probably is battered like the Fine Balance. It probably won't survive one more reading. And I guess I grabbed it because I also felt sorry for it, even though books aren't animate objects, and I shouldn't feel sorry for it. This is Thomas Pynchon's Against the Day, with a great futurist painting on the cover there. This thing has seen better days. I will reinforce it, but I didn't want to leave it behind. It will go in the little book room, and maybe it will be reread this year. I have been seriously tempted to reread not only the long pension that I really love, like Mason and Dixon, but also the long pension that I don't in any way understand. Against the Day, I didn't understand this at all, and maybe I should give it another go. And now I have an ebook of it, and now I have a battered old trade paperback that somebody loved to give it another try. And then we have hardcovers. We have some hardcovers that we've done. Quite a bit of fantasy here and science fiction, including some that I've never seen before in hardcover. This, for instance, this is Paul Park. This is the Sugar Festival. A big thing. I don't know. Mark Richardson could probably tell me if this was a science fiction book club edition. I don't recall this being a science fiction book club edition. It doesn't seem like it is one. But this is a kind of a weird world of his with very long seasons, much like Brian Aldiss. And this has two books, Soldiers of Paradise and Sugar Rain. Two books in that sequence. The sequence has a third volume. Maybe this book came out before the third volume came out. I think the third volume came out in the early 90s, and these two are before then. I don't know if you will give me publication stuff. Yeah, Soldiers of Paradise was 1987. Sugar Rain was 1989. And there is no date in this book for when this book came out. But I'm assuming it came out before the third one, because what would be the point? There's a third book in this series. What would be the point? This is a series about a world in which there is a phenomenon called the Sugar Rain. And what would be the point of making a book with the first two books if the third one was already out? So maybe that gives me a little bit of timing here, but I read Soldiers of Paradise in a mass market paperback back in the 80s. And I've never read the next book in the series, and it's been a long time, so I'm not sure that I would remember much. And same thing with this next one. I've read a lot by this author. I'm assuming that Paul Park and this author are both dead, but I could be wrong. Every time I suggest that, I'm wrong. The author is holding on. This is The Sword of Winter by Marta Randall. I remember really, really enjoying this. Mine was not a hardcover, and again, this has nothing on the back at all, so this could be a science fiction book club edition as well. But the main thing I know this author from is that she was the editor of a couple of anthologies that were really good. But I remember liking this book, all about a fragmenting kingdom, a fantasy world kingdom, very light on the fantasy, very heavy on the politics of an old autocrat who's dying and whose heirs, not one of his heirs is actually fit for the job. And maybe the job of passing on an ironclad autocracy is not a job anybody wants to have succeed. I haven't read this in forever, though. When did this come out? I wish I could remember the name of her anthologies. I think they were called Dimensions or New Dimensions. Yeah, this came out in 1983. And I think I read this, but I believe I read it as a Timescape mass market paperback. I'll have to check. I could do a Google image search for it and see if maybe that crops up. I think that's the form in which I read this. Again, if I'd found this at a thrift shop in Vermont with Mark, then the two of us would just put our heads together and try to remember when we saw this thing. But unfortunately, I had no Mark with me. Then we'll do the last two. The next one is science fiction / fantasy. This is All the Weirs of Pern by Anne McCaffrey in a nice hardcover. Very pretty cover there. Very wise decision not to slap anything over Michael Whelan's artwork. His artwork is just amazing. And this is this is later on in the Pern books. These are stories about the planet Pern in the Rookbat sector that has a sister planet. Every once in a while, that planet gets close enough to Pern so that Spore can make the jump from one world to the other. They live on that other world. But when they encounter Pern, they fall in the form of little curling spirochetes that kill anything organic. So they can devastate the planet, which is quasi-medieval and reliant on architecture, on agriculture. And over the course of millennia, giant telepathic dragons have been developed that belch fire, that burns thread in the air before it hits the ground. And a cadre of dragon riders has been developed that are valiant men and women who ride these dragons into battle with thread when it appears, periodically. And the first book was born from a short story. It was Dragonflight, and then there was Dragon Quest and White Dragon. Those are the first trilogy of the Pern books. I love them. I think they're great. In the 21st century, there would be a few problems with the sexual power balance between the main dragon rider, a man named Flar, and the main woman in the book, Lessa, who has the ability to communicate with all dragons. We follow them. Flower has a younger brother. We follow. We learn the characters of their dragons. There's a Master Harper of Pern, who is very much a cultural repository for a planet that doesn't remember the advanced technology. All of the humans on Pern and even the dragons were largely developed from the stranded original colonial mission to Pern, which did not know about Thread. The initial surveys of the planet happened at a time when that sister planet was not close enough, so no one knew what would happen when they get close enough. No one knew that Thread would happen. Or, of course, Pern would have been designated as not suitable for human habitation. But instead, that original colony, that original group of humans, they are the subject of a novel by Anne McCaffrey, who goes back, I think it's called Dragon Dawn. She goes back in time to tell the story of that original colony and their original encounter with Thread and their original encounter with very small little dragonette creatures that live on Pern and seem to have the ability to teleport through folded space, to disappear and reappear. So maybe if those dragons could be built bigger, if they could be engineered to be bigger, and maybe we could come up with some way for them to belch fire, we might have a natural approach to Thread, because a lot of the original technology, the high tech that original crew of colonizers had when they come to Pern, is failing, and will continue to fail. This will go to being a fantasy world. That's what I love about Pern, is that it's a perfect marriage of fantasy and science fiction. One of many, of course, but the people in Dragonflight have no idea that their world is the eons-long afterthought of technology. They have no idea that the dragons that they're riding are the products of genetic engineering. No idea about any of that until this book. And in this book, Anne McCaffrey she returns to her main characters, Lessa and Flower and Fnor and the Master Harper of Pern and whatnot, as they find the remnants of that colony ship. And some of its AI is still working. It was built to last. It gives them all sorts of a glimpse into where their whole world comes from. I thought it was really, really good. Really, some of the later Pern books very much feel like they're on autopilot, and this is one that I didn't feel was that way. But I haven't read it since, I haven't read it since it first came out. I just saw that this hardback is $20, so that tells you it was a long time ago. This came out in 1991. That's a long time. I haven't read it since then. So I found a hardcover copy for free. All I had to do was worry about my leather shoulder bag the whole way back to get it. And then finally, the last of them here that I got, this also I've read many times, but I didn't have a copy, and I grabbed it because it's got decal edges. It's in fine shape. That's the Dante Club. Matthew Pearl, here he is when he was just a boy. Oh my God! And this is his breakout book about James Russell Lowell and Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and the group of people in 19th century America who were translating Dante for the first time, when all of a sudden someone seems to be killing people and intentionally imitating grotesque tortures from the Inferno. And so you're the most unlikely cast of sleuths imaginable to try and figure out what's going on. I, like everybody else, when this book first came out, I loved it. Am I guessing 1990? Oh no, 2003. Okay, wow. Okay, I thought it was much earlier than that, but I loved it when it first came out. Everybody loved it, and I haven't read it since then, so I thought I would give it a try. So I loaded it onto the pile. So there we go. That was an unexpected little book haul. £50 that because I dared to leave the house. We have the Dante Club. Let's see, we have all the Weirs of Pern. It's going high on the list in terms of when I reread. We have The Sword of Winter by Marta Randall. I want to say the late Marta Randall, but for all I know, she's still alive, and you're going to tell me that. Same thing with the Sugar Festival, Paul Park. These are not well-known fantasy authors anymore. I'm assuming that they're both dead, but I might be wrong. We have Against the Day by Thomas Pynchon in this rather attractively battered trade paperback. We have Black Hawk Down by Mark Bowden, also on the strong list for rereads relatively quickly. We have the Running Press Jack London. How happy I am to find this, irrationally so, because this is not a well-made book. And I know that. It's not going to survive much. I don't go back to Jack London that often, But I'm going to reinforce the hell out of it and put it where it belongs. I should never have got rid of my previous copy. And then mass market paperbacks. We have A Fine Balance by Harrington Mystery. Not really going to survive, I don't think. We have Open Season by Archer Mayer, the first Joe Gunter book, set in Vermont. We have The Civilization of Rome by Donald Dudley, perfect companion to his book on the Annals of Tacitus. We have Alda Taxi writing about the newest letter collection by Christopher, newest biography of Christopher Marlowe, or letters by Marcel Duchamp or whoever. And then 2 anthologies, 50 Great Ghost Stories and 50 Great Horror Stories, with original cover artwork and edited by John Canning, who I do not know. So there you go. That was an unexpected book haul for today. We'll see what tomorrow brings. In the meantime, I will wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.